but we have some pretty interesting stuff to discuss with you. It's amazing how this technology keeps evolving. Anyway, you are in the panel called Remote Production Systems for Council Chambers, and especially, folks, for local events, because we want you to get your brains thinking too about, as you find out more about this whole approach, what else could be done with it, and a lot more than just the council chambers. So anyway, Randy VanDalsen here of the Buske Group. I'll be sort of facilitating this thing. We've got three very smart people with me here. At the end, there is this guy named Justin Cowgill. What are you going to say? I mean, my God. Over in he's a, chief technology officer or something like that, and just regional guru. So he's going to do some cool stuff with us. Also have a newbie to our organization to a great degree, Scott Brocious. He's worked in city of Riverside recently, where he did some applications a lot like this, and now he's over at the city of Rialto. He's on that government side of things, but I think he's got some other interesting stories too. And then all the way from Germany, just for this guy, he was the only vendor. I have been talking about this issue for a few years with our vendors, because the Buske Group does a lot of consulting work, and I cannot believe the number of places we go where we see a community that is, or a media center that's responsible for several communities and covering their council meetings and other things, and they all have redundant chamber packages, one after another, at all these different locations. There's one in Minnesota where they had 12. All with, their own switchers and cameras and all that, and that means staff had to get to all those, and yada, yada, yada. And we've had issues here, and like, say, the Gilroy folks here in California are responsible for San Juan Bautista, which is quite a drive, and boy, if the traffic gets rough, how am I going to get to that council meeting in time to cover it? Is there any solution, please? I have talked this up with vendors at our conferences the last few years. This guy bit. He decided to work on a white paper that eventually we're going to have a QR code for his big white paper on this, but they also put together the sheet that you've got as you walked in. So anyway, what's going on here? Why are we doing this panel? I've given you a little hint of some of the reasons why, but one of the things that we have, especially in California, is money for equipment, but not money for people. And we're trying to stretch our people as far as we possibly can to do the kind of services that we want to offer, that we really want to offer. And we often have to, the media centers have to cover council meetings. But man, there are so many other things that we'd like to do too, but how do we get our people to that? How do I get can I get a truck crew? Can I get a whole group of people to go to an event to cover it? Is there some other way to do this? So, how about we already have had some sort of version of remote control of cameras. We do that in council meetings right now, but we have a guy at the site too, running those cameras, running that, the equipment and the joysticks to run those cameras around. Well, what about other places in town, especially if we could do it by remote control, like these guys will talk to you about? Say at a high school gymnasium covering women's basketball. Or for those of you from Minnesota, at a hockey rink or something like that, covering the games there. High school graduations, one things after another, lectures of important people. Like over in Monterey, they have a place where people come in from around the country to visit and speak. Can we cover that? Can we cover that? Very often it's just a matter of, I don't have the resources I can do that. Is there a solution? So that's what we want to try to talk about here, that there is a solution, and some people have been doing this kind of thing. We're going to start with Scott. He is, again, now at the city of Rialto in California. He was in the city of Riverside, and they did quite a bit of remote coverage of government meetings and maybe some other things that Scott will talk to us about. All right, Scott Brocious, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been at the city of Riverside for about 20 years. I started at Riverside when it was nothing but a VHS tape recorder and an old school Lightronics box that had 4 inputs, and no one knew how to use it. Over that 20 years, probably within about 12 years, we went from that to having a production truck, having a full-blown control room, studio, the whole kit and caboodle. And we're all used to taking the production truck out to do a high school football game, running fiber optic cables out to the stadium all over the place. That's a lot of manpower, a lot of technology, a lot of equipment. It was about $500,000 in equipment to do football games. Not everyone can do that. Over time, we started exploring new ideas, and we went from hardwired cameras to wireless cameras. We're still using wired for the core group, but we used to literally take fiber optic and 2,000-foot fiber and out there on the sidelines and have grips and pulling out spools of cable and all that. And we've quickly realized that's dangerous in this modern day world when you've got a team of 75 large kids running around with pads. And so we transitioned. When wireless started coming out, we were using JVC's Silvis system, which was okay. It worked. That one quickly went away, and we used TerraDeck for a while when they were brand new. And then we went to, now we're using Hollyland stuff. So we're throwing cameras up all over football fields using all wireless. So it's a little bit more remote, but not quite where we wanted to get to. So we kind of went back, took this road down. Council chambers during COVID got a little busy. Had all of our meetings were there. They wanted to start spacing people out. So we kind of made a semi-remote council meeting upstairs in our 7th floor. There's a big conference room. So we added PTZ cameras there and patch them all through fiber. So in Riverside, we're fortunate we have our own utility, so they can run fiber optic cable for us anywhere. So they have a huge fiber ring for all of our power stations and all these things. So the city, we get to use that for whatever we want. They can also run fiber in buildings for us and all that. So we were able to make a remote control room or a remote conference room and patch that down via one strand of fiber using, we came up with a product called by Thor Broadcasting out of LA. They can multiplex your cameras off of 12, 16 signals off of one fiber optic. You can loop in control and all that. So we were able to use that as our kind of own little mini backhaul from 7 floors above us back to our TriCaster in the control room. So it gave us kind of the ability to do a remote council chambers and our real council chambers just off of one strand of fiber. We were doing a lot of that with camera control at least, but it's not the greatest thing to try and send live cameras over Ethernet, the long distances. So we were using fiber for that type of thing. So that worked out really well where we could do all that. One TriCaster's in the control room downstairs and we're controlling a room literally 7 floors above us. We built a studio, which used to be on an air fiber system. We didn't have fiber, so that was problematic. There was limited bandwidth between the studio and council chambers. So we eventually got fiber put in there, which opened up the world. So we got this whole city network extended to the studio. That point was when NDI was coming on board and it was readily available. So at that point, we had TriCasters in all of our different locations and our production truck, and we were using NDI to control systems 5 miles away just off of your computer. So I could often sit at my desk and I could watch the council meeting going on at City Hall, and I'm at my studio across town, and I could see they're having an issue, something's wrong on screen. So I would just open up my NDI system, go into the TriCaster, get its entire multi-viewer, and I can control the TriCaster from my desk. So it was really awesome because you can do that. So they were still doing it in-house, but I could fix things, I could help with that. I would do the same thing in my studio. We did a sports show after all of our football games. We'd come back and we'd do kind of a sports center with highlights of all the different games and all that. And I had a large crew of students working in the studio with one guy, one more senior engineer, and then I could literally kind of supplement that coverage or that assistance while sitting at my desk. You could do it I used to do it sometimes from a laptop and a Stream Deck. I could control my whole TriCaster from a laptop, sitting anywhere on the city network, even at home. So there's also ideas we've played around with where you don't have to be on a VPN, or you can remote into a computer that is on the network, and you're just controlling that computer remotely. So we did a lot of that over the last couple years during COVID. Some other things we've always played around with was LiveView now can send 4 signals across one system, so you can send out a camera crew and just send everything back to the studio. So you can have kind of a half remote production by doing things like that where you're bringing in cameras remotely. You're not bringing out the production truck anymore. So sending all that via the internet back to a studio facility where we're doing the production side in-house, but you have remote cameras is kind of a hybrid option of those types of things. And we've all probably are used to doing remote guests during COVID and remote council meetings. We continue that on, just like the news organizations are all doing now, where we have guests on for sports shows and all that. And we used to fight with the coaches to come down to the studio. We want to interview you. Now, half of them are standing outside with an iPhone on their field while their kids are playing, practicing that day, and we're doing interviews like that. So we're using NDI to do all of that, to get really clean audio, really clean video, without having to patch laptops in and pin people and all that. NDI can do all of that in-house, where it's all direct digital and things like that. So it's a semi-remote. You're still doing it in-house, but I could do it from my desk and have a TriCaster somewhere else, talking to studio people, talking to infield people, all off of that NDI, embedding streams and things like that. So that might be enough for me. I think that's the main components of it. There's a lot of detail that goes into all that, but that's the general ideas of some of that stuff.
I hope this is sparking your upstairs view of things. We want to hear questions. If any of these, yeah.
What were you using for control service? Are you using an iPad?
You can. We had the one stripe was
Left arrow.
Yeah, there was a one. We had the one stripe on the TriCaster, but I use Stream Deck a lot, so I was custom making my Stream Deck what I needed Stream Deck to do. So I wanted my commands, and I would just build it into a Stream Deck. You can. We're not really doing a lot of OBS because we're doing everything in the TriCaster, and at least for what we were doing. We're using TriCaster for everything. So we were generally recording to tape. We weren't doing those live. Football was live, but the shows were not. So we were generally recording the tape, and then we'd go in there, and we'd do graphics, and we'd do some cleanup, and then we'd publish that after. But really, you can use the TriCaster multi-viewer. Just everything's in there, kind of thing. But we were customizing it with Stream Decks and just using the actual TriCaster one stripe. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're a small access center, and we're in a rural area, which is fiber is spreading slowly, and the networks are all disconnected from one another. So I guess my question is there an option to do this using
Just proprietary, yeah.
traditional networks?
Oliver's going to get into that. He's going to show you that. But yes, you can. Oliver will talk about an NDI bridge, where you're basically taking an NDI system in this place and an NDI system over there, and you're making them talk to each other over public Wi-Fi. So it can be done. It's fiber is great. Not everyone has that, but yeah, there is options for that as well to do that.
And
I
for
think
those of
Oliver
you
will do that part.
or your remote facilities right now are not using NDI cameras, Oliver might be able to talk to you about a black box.
Yeah, there's ways to convert those.
Way to
types of
convert,
things.
and the issues associated with that we'll tell you about too. All right, hey Justin, what do you got to say about what you've done in there's a lot of it's in the Contra Costa County area and Concord, that type of stuff?
Yeah, so
All right, go.
I'll talk primarily about an install that was done for the city of Concord. But I'm going to start with NDI should stand for not doing it. So it's an important part of how things move forward, but that's a protocol I will dabble with it because everything's worth playing with, but I'm still in the SDI realm of things. Big fan of where network goes and a lot of other network things. So over at City of Concord, what they have, and actually they have had for a very long time, but we refreshed it in, I want to say 2017, so not as recent ago as I thought, but basically they have their council chambers, everything connected there. Using a Joseph fiber system that we had custom made from, I think it's technically Bell Fiber out of the UK, same concept. One fiber strand running to a remote location, but that remote location is not on campus. It actually hits their city, and it's not owned by them in this case, so they have an agreement where they have certain things. It goes from their city hall all the way out to wherever the head end for that particular unit is, back across town over to a local park, and that's where they cover music in the park concerts. So they have 4 PTZs that they set up there, and we backhaul those all SDI. We have Dante Network. We also have some analog network that we convert to Dante Network and backhaul everything. And on site, they can have an SDI feed return as well. So there's an area where all of this equipment is housed, and you can go down in, and there's a little router there. So while you're on site, if you brought the controller with you, we have a little remote controller, you can verify, do all the cameras work? You can even go and look, are all of the cameras there? But then when you get back to the shop and do that, they have also learned that they just have a different group of people set those cameras up, so someone's already back at the shop and can check that out. But similarly so, they cover graduations at the Concord Pavilion, which is really far away. And it's amazing, the fiber run that it does, but that's how they do this. They take and they've got PTZs that they can set up and cover, oh gosh, like 12 different graduations for all the different schools and things that come throughout things. But what they've recently run into is they want to be on premise, believe it or not, to do those graduations, which we were all like, oh, what? And so the issue becomes some of it's more about being seen. And that's what becomes the difficult part of this remote nature of things. So it's still important that it's remote, because the flip side of this is they still want to go live. They still want to do all these other things. So they can still, because the network is extended across this fiber, they can still access their playback system. They can access their systems for going live and can broadcast from City Hall, but they are now controlling everything, but they want to sit on premise and do this. And it's so that their logo and the recognition of people, so they don't want to be buried in a bunker, as a matter of fact. They want to sit up top so people go, oh, that's right. That's who's here and who's doing it. They have found that the branding and the misguided part of what's going on is what they're missing. And so there's a whole nother part of that sometimes they need a person there, because that's what's making that bridged gap there. And I'll throw a little personal inference into this, where I also feel like they get run over a little bit, is the same audio video guy is also having to fill water for the council people before. Seems a little over the top, because it's become a convenience thing, right? So like not being there can make your operator do a little bit better of their job than worrying about water cups being filled, right? So like have them be at what those are, but simple fiber backhaul, realistically most of what migrating to, although we're not doing NDI, almost everything over network. The beauty to getting to everything over network is you do simplify your costs, you do simplify the equipment needs, because if you have the right network built out, you are not needing a more expensive fiber box that's doing all of those conversions. But the other benefit to the other is some of your old stuff might work, right? Like, so it just depends on which way you go about it. But similarly, so we handle the same thing at Create TV. We handle lots of different signals flowing throughout the building by making sure one control room can control all of the different rooms. And over there, we use a multitude of protocols. So we're doing NAV, we're doing Dante, we're doing SDI. And at some point, I probably will have to do NDI, because so until something else comes along. So. Yeah.
With regard to audio, do you guys typically rely on the audio that's at the site from their own PA system or something that you tap into, like at a council chambers or whatever other type of event? How do you handle that side of it? Because we're talking about the remote control of the cameras.
So in chambers, what I like to do is make sure that I actually have a split. So oftentimes in the chambers, we're making sure that the audio is feeding the room, but then we're getting a separate feed that is EQ'd differently for the broadcast. Because if you didn't know, like what we're doing right here, right now there's no EQ on this, which is why this is weird. But if we had separate EQ of it, what you EQ for record and what you put out for a live mix are two different things. So we take and have a in-room mix, but before that in-room mix where the mics are, they split off and they feed their mixer. That's all done over Dante. And similarly, so most of the DSPs we use also we take an auto mix and have a level that has not been EQ'd to send over for that. But if it's on site, like for that graduation and things like that, or the concert, oftentimes it's based on whatever mix is there. So we do try to pre-work with the technicians of that to see if we can get a separate aux so that we aren't affected by the same compression and EQ that's going into every single thing. Because oftentimes the way their systems are set up, they're pulling out certain frequencies or changing the way things sound so it sounds better for in the room, because they have all these other things they can tune with. But that means that your feed for your record sounds terrible, right? It lacks life or punch to it, because it's either so flat or it's missing the important sibilance of what you've got coming through.
For a remote control of a council meeting, what kind of pushback, and how have you dealt with any pushback from people who want a warm body there, as opposed to somebody remotely controlling the cameras?
I know in my cities where I've worked, they want someone there. They are comfortable. They do not want to say there's a problem and there's not a body that comes out of that control room to fix it. That's probably the biggest option and hurdle, is to get people comfortable with not having a person there.
I presume the mayor had a technician over at his home during the COVID time. When
Exactly. Post-COVID, it's gotten, I think people are more willing, but I think people are starting to revert. Like I've seen they're more going back to their old ways, so that is probably the hardest thing to go, no, I'm not going to be there, but I can fix everything remotely. And they go, well, they haven't seen it. So when they see it, they'll be more
aware
comfortable.
and be prepared about that. You're dealing with that type of issue. But
So most of the cities I work with, they're stuck in that same arena. I'm very fortunate for the city of San Jose. They actually see the value when there is a difference between in-room AV and broadcast. So there's a whole different group of people that deals with in-room AV. So that idea of having to be there as the broadcaster is not a part
Unless
of
you're
it.
the same guy, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're literally two different departments. So that's the benefit, is that they have split that and they see the value in that because it's addressed differently, right? Those two things have to work together, but they are separate.
okay, you had a question too?
So the tech part is great, but I think like Justin mentioned, there's like this philosophical part of it, like being around our partners and making those relationships that you have when you're actually in the room and you're talking to a council member, and they support you, because they see you every day, and they're more on your team. So I wonder, like, you talked a little bit about it, but how have you dealt with that, like, not being in the room and still, like, keeping those relationships strong?
Well, I'm no longer the operator in the room. I have crews that do that, right? So I care that they, wear the brand, right? And that they're there. But when they're not the ones that there, or like during COVID when none of them were there, but my guys were, the other part of that is it's about making the rounds. It's about you giving the FaceTime at other times, and that way if you're checking in with, so how'd that meeting go? Where are those things? It's a different approach to it, right? It's a faster approach because your time with them, you're now engaging with them to find out what's working, what's not working. It's not about in the middle of something that they're not necessarily doing. But it's a shift in culture and mentality, and it's not a faster, easy thing to deal with either.
And here's the dilemma that they, like you, have got to come to grips with. The money for operations and staff is not growing. The money for equipment is a bit more stable. What are we going to do to handle that? Everybody wants everything covered, and what can you do? So they need to realize that sometimes we're going to have to do things like this so we can continue to provide the services that we so desperately want to provide. But if we don't have the staff to be everywhere all the time, can we come up with some other solutions to try to make this happen? You had a question.
Me?
Yes.
Well, I was just on the same thing. There's a lot of communication that happens in the room between the operator. Like I have a board of supervisors meeting that goes all freaking day long. They take 6, 7 breaks, and it's, unless you're seeing the room, they'll just come back and start, and you're not ready.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you have that communication?
That's
Or what if, like,
You're holding
they're
it.
not sending me audio? Who do I tell? How do I tell them?
So that actually I solve in a different regard. So one, do you need to have a window from your control room into the space that you're looking? Is that a requirement? Do you have that still? Some people still require that for like their studio to their control or their council chambers. Right? So, and then I would tell you, you're not doing your job because what is your window? It's your cameras. So some of that's setting up an extra camera, like a wide shot that you will never take in a million years. Set it up on another stream, another service. It's your right. Grab one person I know.
But it goes both ways. They're like, okay, are we on? Are we on?
Okay,
Can someone tell me?
so hold on. Yeah, so there's a solution that we'll get there. But like a Ring doorbell camera stuck somewhere on a Wi-Fi, you have practically real-time video and audio, so you can see what's going on in the room. So you can use simple solutions like that to get that. But the easiest way that I have all my operators communicating with stuff, because we also do it just for within the clerks, in this case, because they're all Microsoft Teams, we use Microsoft Teams. You open up chat because it also helps for during the meeting, right? Like, oh, hey, this isn't working, that isn't working. You need that back channel. It's the same thing that worked on Zoom, right? You couldn't chat on Zoom because everybody saw that chat. So you used another back channel to do it. So it's just shifting. That's it.
Yeah, like in Riverside, we have phone and public comment, and we are literally queuing the mayor how many people are on Zoom for the calls and all on Teams. So, you know, we just...
Throw shade at you though, and something's going on.
Oh, yeah, it's always our fault.
But you can't pick up that nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
you're in the room, you can vibe check the room.
Yeah.
Yes, now you're an interesting character because I know you in Sacramento have, or in Sacramento County, have how many different places you are having to?
Currently, we're at 11 control rooms that we operate out of regularly.
11 control rooms.
So that means that you have to have 11 control rooms worth of gear, 11 different caption encoders, whatever you're going to do for
Staffers
captioning
going out to-
service, you know.
It's up one manual for all 11?
Well, kind of on topic, I have, one for like the switcher. We try to standardize on that in different sections, and then you always have to have that one that's unique to that location. Because
Yeah,
just the operational,
guys, this-
clerks have
he
different
needs a new-
preferences and all that.
yeah.
But kind of pivoting the question is, what I find valuable is before the meeting starts, talking to the clerk and kind of, confirm, oh, I heard you have like 3 PowerPoints for today, and I heard board member so-and-so is not going to be here. What do you kind of use to kind of get that gauge of, oh, by the way, getting a channel to get the staff to let you know.
So for me in Riverside was a unique animal. We had a sunshine ordinance, so we published our agendas 12 days early. So not the Brown Act, 12 days in advance versus the 3. I have now transitioned. I left Riverside 3 weeks ago. I've been at my new city for 3 weeks, and it's utter chaos. Nobody knows what PowerPoints are where. So yeah, it is a totally different animal now where I'm having to chase people down. Where's your PowerPoint? Who's got PowerPoints? What, so it is a different animal, but it's kind of having to change that mindset where like this stuff all needs to be given in advance. So you know what you're walking into that day when you walk into council, and it can be done. It's just, everyone's got to work together. You got to convince your clerk that it benefits them to have all this stuff in advance. It benefits the departments to submit this stuff in advance, because then they're not, oh, we forgot to send you that PowerPoint, and then they're standing up there going, where's my PowerPoint? Where's my PowerPoint? Where's my PowerPoint? So, yeah.
This is where I'm at, because I can do those things that you're talking about, but they're not going to.
Yeah.
All of them are so.
I have your solution though. So then my next question for you is, what if my name was Pony? Right? What if my name was Pony? You can play the what if game all day long. The only way you make change is by ripping that Band-Aid off. The only reason that has existed is because you allowed it to exist and put it on yourself. So the only reason you are responsible for those things is you did the right thing and you engaged with the person, right? It is a matter of changing that.
One
And
thing
the way
I'll-
you change that is you find new ways. There are you get clerks used to doing, they want to pre-prep, but things are going to change on the fly. If you can show you react on that Teams chat, because that's the thing, you have to show that your action is there on that, and once you do, they're all in. If the support is still there, now if you're slacking and not paying attention to that chat and they're like, I need this, and that's not happening, you're not getting there. But it is also breaking down the responsibilities of what they need to do. Some of that's taking some of the responsibilities off of them. Do your clerks run the Zoom or do you run the Zoom? If you're remote, maybe you run the Zoom now because it might be easier for you to do that, right? And there's different ways. So it's a matter of reevaluating the jobs to make them work differently.
In the back.
You just gotta throw it back at them because they require people to have their agendas in at a certain time before they will put it on the agenda. So the same thing, you gotta hold yourself to the same standard you apply to everybody else.
PowerPoints, yeah.
And
Are you guys paperless?
Riverside was, Rialto is not. So they still print them out, an agenda packet and all that, and so.
another,
Do you share that agenda? Do you have PDFs of it or something?
They do. So at Rialto too, we're kind of like that. We are not in City Hall. My studio is across, it's close, but we are not in the building. So I cannot look through a window. I can't open a door and I'm in the council chambers. I have to exit my building, walk across the campus, and go in the council chambers. Like Justin said, I like SDI. I'm used to SDI, but when I went to Rialto, everything is NDI. There is not a single SDI cable linking the council chambers to my control room. So we're a great experiment because 7 cameras in that room, and we have no way to, if the network goes down, that SDI isn't there to be that lifesaver. We also have an audio board is in our room. So like, with Justin saying, how do you control your audio and all that? We have it off-site too. So we're sending audio back the other way through Dante to council chambers.
Wait, you're mixing for in the room while you're not in the room?
It's not my choice. I walked into this 3 weeks ago.
All right, folks. We have another guy in this panel too, and he's got a demo. You ready for a demo? All right, Oliver, let's hear what you got here.
Yeah.
And let's see what you've got.
It's kind of difficult after this interesting discussion to change tack a little bit, but just 3 words about myself. Oh, before we start, just technology-wise, who knows what NDI is? Oh, you reread the paper we gave you. Who is using NDI? Yeah. Who is doing remote production already? Okay. Who likes to be stuck in traffic? Okay, just checking. About myself, I run a company called Boinx Software, founded in 1996. We make Mac software or software for the Apple platforms. We won several of these awards, which are the most prestigious. The most important awards in the software industry, the Apple Design Awards, a bunch of these. I am a digital native that's turning 56 tomorrow. So this is me being a digital nomad, and who can guess the date? Based on the machine? That's in 2000. And that was a trip up the west coast of the United States, and I was working from the road. No, macOS 9, 10, I don't know. So, and this was me doing the first live stream on the internet. And that was in 1999, and that was the solar eclipse in Europe. So, and that was the biggest live stream on the internet up to this time. We managed to kill all of the internet in Germany. So, yeah, the guy who ran the servers, he had a little pager. Some of you are old enough to know what that is. And the pager started beeping, and there's like all the servers went down one after the other. So that was a pretty big stream back then. Randy, last year at the was it in the it was in San Jose, right, at the national convention last year. Approached us and said, the problem we really want to solve is this thing, the 4 or more council chambers, very few people, a lot of travel problems, and budget. So how can we do this? And MimoLive is really a very uniquely positioned tool to do this. And why now? And the reason is technology is now available. Like those computers are so damn powerful. Apple just announced a new M4 MacBook Air that's around $1,500, and you can run probably 20 NDI feeds on that. 4K is like maybe 10, and then encode 7 streams, do all the graphics, have some Zoom calls in, and everything can be handled by that machine. And NDI is really coming to a state where it's, I like NDI because it's very accessible, right? So you don't need to have special hardware, you don't need to have special network, you don't need to have anything special, and it's built like like you would build something like this if you're a software engineer. So it's not, counting the number of channels or limiting the number of channels. So we can have the end devices on the network. They can be accessed by any number of computers. So I can access with 3 production systems. I can access the same camera. So I can make, at the same time, using the same camera, I can make a vertical and a, portrait video or something like that, or one edit for an iMac and one for the stream and one for the record, and they can all be different. And the third thing here stands for the acceptance, and Justin said that, is like people start to accept this new digital technology, and it's, there are shortcomings, and I think you've discussed them. Before I get into this, I think I want to do a demo. Okay. Turn on this. So now it's getting complicated because I have one. I can do it. I can do it. Oh. What a microphone stand. Okay, so one of the neat things about our solution is that you have these control panels, right? The control surfaces, and I have 2 cameras here in the room, and as you can already see, it's not like on one of the hardware thingies. The mute button. Okay, so if I press one of these buttons, more than one thing can happen. So you see the lower third automatically comes in when I press that button, and we lost the remote. Let's see if I can quickly get them back. There's the remote.
There's some decibel levels over there.
Yeah.
So the thing to remember about is, well, you might be going, oh wait, you lost something. We're on what kind of Wi-Fi are we on here?
Yeah.
Right. So we're on the free hotel Wi-Fi, doing this, and everything. If you were to come look up here, most of this you can order from Amazon, and it's stuff I buy. It's quality pieces. You don't have to spend a lot to achieve some of this.
The hotel provided this wired connection that it's giving us a whole 7 megabit. 7.
Is that down or up? Yeah. 4 down, 3 out. No. 1.2 up.
So what happened is I got kicked out of the Hilton Honest Meeting Wi-Fi. But now I'm back, and so
his wireless bridge, you know how you have the little login screen you have to hit every day here? That's the point, is this login bridge allows you to jump for it. So that's a travel router, and you can sign in to that, and you just have to do the accept, type your name, your room name, and he's back in. So we only lost it because the hotel Wi-Fi. So you're only as good as your weakest point. Don't use hotel Wi-Fi.
okay, yep. I'm not seeing this. This should see this. All right, so we have these cameras in Seattle, And if you think these are static, that's only because those guys are a print, right? So, but we look at them with a live camera, so I can actually switch over to the other council member, and I can go and see a wide shot. Those are all live cameras up in Seattle. And this is like the window view from Seattle, and you see the cars go by. And I can just adjust the camera if I want to. So you see this is also a live camera. And we can have the weather forecast for the next week in Seattle. Yeah, so that's basically the demo, and thank you for explaining everything before I got to it. So just a couple of things I brought with me here before we go to the... So if you have existing cameras and you want to use them on an SDI, there's these little boxes that go for, they pay, this again, thank you. So this is one that goes from HDMI to NDI. It's about $250. Same thing is available for SDI to NDI. So it's really easy for your existing equipment to integrate with NDI. A couple of things I like about NDI. One thing I already told you about is the ability to access the same cameras from multiple devices, from multiple editing systems. The other one is when you set up at a venue, you have to run a cable to each camera, right? So what I do when we have the edit booth at the back, I run one cable to the front, put a switch a network switch under the stage, and run all the cables from the camera into that. So it's very easy to handle networks and setup, and it's whoops, I hope I don't. Very lightweight. This is everything you need for remote production. And yeah.
Oliver, you weren't using a fiber connection to Washington State just now, but we've been hearing these folks talking about fiber connections. Tell me, what should folks plan on doing when they try to set up something like this? Do they really need to have fiber from their media center to a remote location where they're going to control the cameras and switch and put it on the cable system and stream it at the same time? All these things possible without having fiber connection to these locations?
Yes. So as you can see, we have only a Wi-Fi network from here. There is a pretty big network connection up in Seattle. So, but the bandwidth you can do very different. There's a broad range of bandwidths you can use. So you can make it so that it's running 1 megabit per source, or you can make it so that it's 10 or 15 megabits per source. So it's really flexible for the things you have. And you only have to have like a fast connection from your production facility to the internet, and from the internet and from the council chamber to the internet. You don't have to have a direct line from the council chamber to your production facility. Yeah.
Chris? Yeah.
You teased earlier NDI bridge in the box. A lot of this is enabled by NDI bridge configuration.
Yeah, the NDI bridge runs on this little PC down here. And I hope that, so NDI bridge is a tool that's provided by NDI for free, so that the software doesn't cost you any money. You only have to have like a little PC to connect to another little PC. They've told me that they're working on a Mac version. So in the next year, we can probably run the bridge also on the laptop. So we can reduce the required equipment even more.
As folks in the audience have been thinking about this, any other applications you can think of? I think we've mentioned certainly the council chambers, remote controlling from your media center. Are there other things that might also be of interest to you that we can ask these guys if they think that's technically possible to do a school board meeting? That'd be probably very similar to a council chambers. I'm also thinking if you can get the okay from some sort of performing arts location where they will let you. I know a place in Sacramento I'd love to see them let you, but it's a historic building, damn it. But put some cameras in that because there's performances that go on there.
But there's another way to think about that, Randy,
Yeah.
right? So the other way to think about this is, so you did ask a question there that we should address. Do you need a fiber? That depends on who you're asking. Because if you have the option to get one, even if you're doing this, the answer is yes. Don't give up what you can get because you can still run just network over that fiber. But do you have to have one? No. I think the big benefit about something like this is you can do like a portable system, right? We all think about our chambers with these installed cameras and these things. The reality is those cameras are really easy to move, especially like this is just a little Ozbot. Right, this little PTZ he's got over here, and it's so small and light, and it's one network cable. How many of your NDI cameras are just one cable? And realistically, you think about it, it's like one screw and a thing to take out, and the whole camera can come down. So you could either have mounts at multiple locations, and you're moving this system around, so you aren't necessarily putting a bunch of gear out there, because that's the other thing that pains me. I told you about the city of Concord. Well, one of their sites that I didn't tell you about is their senior center. They have 3 cameras in their senior center for when they want to have a larger meeting. You know what they haven't done since before 2017? Had a meeting over there.
And like Justin's, I did a couple events. We had this big insect fair in Riverside. So we were producing content for a stage and live stream some things. And it was under the library is a kind of a big bridge. You have this big open area underneath it. And as the sun, it's in the summer and it's 110. And as that sun's moving, we literally just took our NDI cameras that are on a C-stand, no having to mount them or 5 cables coming off, just move it, move it there, I put it there, I put it there. We even had a couple wireless ones, so kind of not NDI, but wireless like Hollyland units where we're controlling CCUs over, on a C-stand and we can move them anywhere we wanted, just pick it up and walk away with it kind of thing. So remote is not necessarily just NDI. Not just IP, there's all these different versions of it, hybrid versions of it. One scenario I advised Riverside Unified School District that we had 9 high schools in Riverside. I helped them put in a TriCaster at one school, and they wanted to kind of do their own sports. So you can get like Oliver showed you, the little boxes. They can throw up a camera on their stadium, and they have a baby TriCaster, the little mini X, and they can literally sit in their air-conditioned control room in their TV studio on the campus and send 4 kids out to the state game or 2 kids and live switch it from there. You don't have to bring all this stuff out to the game anymore, especially because the school, you're already on that network. But on their network, they could send it anywhere. They could go from the school board to the school, school to school, could collaborate on things over their own network.
But let's talk about that. That's a totally different thing, and I think this is where we're going to need to default back to Oliver. We say the word network like it ain't no thing. How many people in here are network engineers? Thank God none of you raised your hands. How many of you know how to talk to a network engineer? No. I mean talk their language. How many of you get pissed off when they don't do what you want? Yeah, you don't. So, no, that means that you don't know how to speak to a network engineer. That's what that means, right? So the point is some of it's we got to learn that lingo, their language, their time frames. Similarly, so they're trying to learn ours, right? And so we're trying to find this magical bridge. One of the magical bridges, because when I was thinking NDI eats up a lot of network resources. So if you have a dedicated switch and a dedicated platform, no big deal. But if you're talking about putting that on a corporate network or your city or your schools, so Oliver, how would we put this on somebody's network but not put it on their network?
Yeah, that's what we show at the booth, and this is what this little thing is about. Is like this contains everything you need to have your own dedicated NDI network, And only the little box connects you to the internet. And there's options like hardwired, which worked, and and Wi-Fi, and you can get a little LTE5 modem and plug it in via USB. So this is really really nice device for that, and it isolates everything NDI from the other networks you might connect to. So the hotel doesn't know that we are running NDI here. They won't even see see any of the traffic.
So I don't have to reconfigure the firewall on either end. I don't have to do anything. You're doing a handshake just using standard internet.
And just so if you want to run like 3, 4, or 5 cameras, you don't even have to do anything special to the network. And if you just plug them into this thing, and as long as you don't have any other traffic on the network, that's fine. If that's a big difference if you try to use your corporate network and there's like all those teams and file sharing and the people browsing and whatever. If that is on that network, it becomes more complicated. So this setup really helps you to get started with NDI, because it's like, this is the simplest and easiest way to get started with IP or network-based video.
For those of you, again, who haven't seen an NDI camera before, there's one right here you can come and take a look at later. I think also over in the exhibit area, I think Panasonic has an NDI camera over there.
All their PTC cameras are now NDI enabled.
So,
They have Panasonic remotes in every one of our theaters, and it all works great. The question I have is, do I have to get a specific switch to switch by private net side?
I have used a large number of different switches in the last year and a half or so. I've switched to either using a Netgear AV switch, which is made specifically for this thing, or this Unify switch, which I have here, the Unify Pro series. The switch is about $400, $350, $400, $399, and the latest software version, they have added support for making a profile that is specific to NDI and Dante. So this makes this switch, you can turn on one button and it's perfectly configured to use AV. And that's those two brands, is like the Unify and Netgear.
The Netgear AV switch.
Well,
Yes,
wait,
yeah.
but there's a caveat to that.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with your network engineers that you're trying to avoid talking to, you need to not avoid talking to them, because if they have a brand specificity and they're willing to help do that configuration, you don't want to avoid that, because that's going to help them want to do this. Right. Exactly. You're going to make it crazy. Now, if you were the one setting it up, I can completely agree. I run both of these at my facility, Ubiquity switches and the Pro Series specifically, and the AV40.
Cable, I see the gray one, right? The camera's PoE.
Yeah, cameras, PoE, and NDI, and the whole bit. And all Panasonic PTZs, they told me, are now NDI, and they are on April 1st releasing a bunch of the ones that you used to have to pay for the license. You will no longer. There'll be a firmware update.
And it's not just PTZs. JVC makes all of their camcorders. If you wanted to use JVC, they all have an option for NDI, so it's not just PTZs and that's it. You can hook in regular cameras, laptops, computers. A lot of different things can be on an NDI network. So, and you can control computers remotely via NDI.
Can I just ask one question before you there? With this system, are you able then to get separate feeds for each camera that's out there remote, and maybe come into, like, say, a TriCaster? I think a lot of us are used to using TriCasters for the actual switch.
Yeah, the TriCasters will see, when I go in, like in Rialto,
Yeah.
we have 7 cameras in our council chambers, a laptop, we are feeding the screens. The whole place is NDI. The screens in the council chambers are all receiving an NDI signal. I can also get feeds from them if they plug things in. And I go into there, so when I go to my TriCaster and select which camera I want on my input, there's just a list of all these NDI devices.
So at the home base, your TriCaster can be used to actually do the meeting.
And it can send out. So you
Or if you want a switcher that doesn't crash, you don't use a TriCaster. So I am.
All of you, get rid of your TriCasters. That's what Justin says.
That's right.
Get me alive.
But to be fair, the NDI bridge and the NDI thing, you could take the time and go SDI to NDI, NDI bridge back out to SDI, and feed an SDI switcher if you really wanted to. Yeah, exactly. And it's ridiculous to do that, but like you could. So like there are different ways to thinking about it.
Okay, let's go out here. Let's see. We haven't heard. Go ahead.
Well, two things I want to say. Getting a network person, I grew one, my son, but he got too good and he got hired away by Zoom. So, but that's part of the reason I have a good network at home. But the point that you made while Oliver was trying to reconnect your network is you said all of this is available on Amazon. If any of you have ever tried to build a truck or build a fly pack, I built this fly pack. I can order everything that's in this pack and get it overnight from Amazon. And the majority of the time is finding the screws to put it together. And if a part fails, I literally have an inexpensive part to make it work.
You can have two at the price point.
He has.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
if you're worried about reliability and having survivability, so many times I've had gear that I couldn't use the whole system because there was one part that I couldn't get in a timely manner.
Amazing.
That was nothing like this where I know overnight I could have what I need.
Let's go to this other John.
Two questions. First one is, on NDI has a certain amount of latency. So, I mean, to the degree that you might have like iMag or bring pictures back.
Let's see how.
An issue or not really?
Is that an issue?
You can see how fast Oliver, when he switches his camera, watch how fast when he pushes the button.
I was just say, there's what I don't think we can show. Well, we can see.
While he's doing that, I'll ask my second.
Yeah.
The second question is how many people in the audience are using the other IP solution, which is Dante?
Who's using Dante?
Because I mean,
Dante, I have analog to Dante.
Well, but I think your question is: are you speaking more?
about Dante for audio.
Yeah, just Dante for audio. Anyone using Dante for video? Yeah, and I don't think I don't think we're going to see a large adoption rate because that's the other reason we were talking about. For as much as I don't like, I'm a Dante mastery certified. I love Dante. I keep diving further and further into it. I love it as the audio protocol. I hate the licensing because that's what drives the price of everything so high, right? So what's going to make Dante video prices so high? Licensing, right? Like
$1,000 a plate or more.
There's the latency dealer right there.
Yep. Hold on. Can you switch to this camera?
So can you switch cameras again? And so no frame drop, it's not dropping frames or anything like that, right?
5, 4, 3.
What about that camera over in Washington?
The problem is we won't see the latency. So you see, you're showing that you can jump to there. This is the problem with Dante or NDI inherently, right? So you're not going to have in any network protocol. You're going to have some inherent latency. That is what Dante AV solves. That is what SMPTE 2110 solves. But we're not talking about 2 megabit streams either, right? So if I go, yeah. So there is some. So I also think that's the other practicality you got to be here. Why are you doing iMag in the chambers? Why are you using network to do iMag in the first place, right? Like, so how many of your cameras can do NDI but also have an SDI or an HDMI out? So maybe your on-prem location is running the wired to reduce the latency, but your switched stream is using NDI to do it, right? So, I mean, do you remember, who remembers
You
the,
have to call an electrical contractor to put a power source up there where your camera sits.
bingo.
and you hang
Oh,
it
and then
off
when the
the
power supply dies and it's up where you can't get to, right? You can just go log into the switch, hit reboot this port, and your camera reboots because it will lock up. And that's any camera. That's not, right? Like, so.
And I do one of my school district sites is some of the cameras are SDI, and then they used all the SDI, so they wanted to add more cameras, so we did have to go to NDI, and you can see a slight difference between an SDI and an NDI on the same thing.
And don't think that NDI is all the same. There's varying levels of it, right? And like my biggest frustration, if you've ever bought a Netgear M4250, that's the Netgear AV switches, is the NDI protocols that come on them are NDI 4 and NDI 5. Good luck finding out the device you have, what version NDI it has, right? I've got clients that have stuff, and I'm like, is that NDI 1? Like, why is this not working? So, Timu. So, and some of that is that you actually just need a firmware update on the device. You need to get into a new enough version of NDI where they've solved things that you're pushing yourself there.
Yes.
Profile pre-built for that. Because that's what we ran into. It wasn't NDI, it was Crestron's NDX. Well, the county has Cisco switches.
Yep.
We don't do Netgear because of security vulnerabilities. So the network team had to figure out how to make Cisco switches work with that multicast traffic. And yeah, that was a painful month.
So the answer to that, though, is that's why you're supposed to use AV integrators to help deal with part of that and not make that be a full burden there. But then there's that, you said an interesting word. You said that Cisco switches don't have a security vulnerability that Netgear switches do. To which I will call BS every day of the week. That's just a perception thing, right? What makes a Cisco switch different than a Netgear switch? Bingo. The ownership, right? Like it is. The label on the box.
Might be off and on when you get to a remote location.
Cisco's can be very finicky.
All right, Chris?
I think one of the vendors might have more on this, but if you guys know about it, great. SWIT is selling an NDI remote system that even has, if it's not IFB, it's intercom built into it. Who knows anything about that?
There's other vendors too. BirdDog makes a lot of NDI conversion systems, and they now have a comms NDI system. You can use, I have a school friend of mine who's a teacher in Menifee area, and he uses Dante to do his comms. So there's a bunch of other options too.
You got to remember at that point, comms is audio, right? So what historically it's got its own power, it's its own thing. Our PL is different than audio. Once you really get into it, it's just audio. So, but it's not as simple as a mic to a mixer. So there's a lot more to it. So Studio Technologies makes stuff, right? And so there's a number of protocols and practices for things that are Dante that are, so there's network.
I have.
Yeah, there's an option to, but that's not like your standard PL line. So if you're going to do that, that is Studio Technologies.
Yes.
So how reliable is the NDI over public network? So you're going from a remote location over public network and back. And is there any sort of like error correction technology that you can use? So for example, we use a Qvidium encoder-decoder pair, and it has its own proprietary error correction.
And how much is the latency?
What's that?
How big is the latency?
Yeah, there is latency.
So you're trading that. You're trading that.
Piece of it for us
Yeah.
is not as important as being, like hyperlive. So we're not really worried about that because we are on a rural network that is not as robust as the city is. So
Yeah.
we have to use that technology in order to overcome that.
So you're using SRT as your protocol?
I don't know what it is, what exactly.
So SRT handles forward error correction probably the best out of all of them, which is why you would utilize that. There's a number of products that do it, but it's probably to that point, you're not going to do a out and back again. You will see tons of latency across that, right? NDI is handling that latency far better. So if you need to go out to a remote spot and then push it back, NDI is going to handle the latency better. But if you need the reliability guarantee of forward error correction for whatever, then you need it, but then you're not going to want to have to deliver it back to the other end, right? You're going to want to have to be your location is final destination, right? So pulling the camera's SRT won't matter. It's if you need to push it back across the way, now you got an issue.
We'll go with,
Any latency, is it consistent or does it vary?
You're using the public internet, everything varies.
we'll go to John next year. And also, I'd love to hear questions from any other folks in the room we haven't heard from yet, so don't hesitate.
Quick, bidirectional
Yeah.
And Zoom is built into Nemo Live, and Zoom recovers very, very well.
I've even seen people use Zoom for comms.
Yeah.
And there's a company, not a company, a bunch of people who do a thing called Spacecom that is a PL for remote broadcasting and very effective. It should be right up.
So what we need to address something about Zoom though. Okay, how many people are here are cities? Anybody here actually a city proper, right? Yeah. What do you think Zoom is making them pay to have Zoom accounts? Way more than what some of that gear costs. The fees that Zoom is trying to push on them to have those Zoom accounts, Zoom quickly does not become. We're talking $60K plus a year.
Zoom education.
For a Zoom platform for some of them. Yeah, because of the way they're doing it. It's where they can make their money. So I get that it sounds like a solution. If the city itself is the supplier, it's a problem. If you as the peg station of the supplier, they want to be your best friend because
Pay even more. Get your Zoom through AT&T event services.
there you go. Right? So, but that's the point is there's far more licensing and contracts that go into some of this, right? And so if you're a peg center, think about the value add you bring by saying, hey, we can supply this part of Zoom. We can supply these things. And yes, you're paying however much money you are, but now you have a very reliable platform tied to this.
Yeah, so one of the things I like about network-based stuff is that there's so many different solutions, right? If you look at the gamers, they use Discord. If you look at, there's so many different things. John mentioned space comms. Zoom can be used as a comms thing. Zoom can be also used as a way to connect remote cameras. We have WebRTC-based solutions. We have this and we have that. And once you are going from SDI, HDMI-based, static, hardware-based network to a software-based network, this opens up a ton of options. That can be difficult to navigate, but also, in most cases, the investment is very, very little to get started. So you can start with, Discord, and then if it doesn't work, you go to Zoom, and if it doesn't work, you go to a different solution. And the way the software as a services operate means that you can usually cancel your contracts month by month. So it's not a big risk to take to go and try something, right? And this is, that's what I like most about this fully digital world, is that you don't design your station for the next 20 years and every cable is static and you have to rip out thousands of cables and stuff like that to change things. And then people want to do portrait video and you're screwed. And in this digital world, someone comes in and says, I want to do portrait video, and there you go. Okay, give me the weekend. We can talk on Monday, and that's it.
Had a question in the back.
The question is, what is the user level requirement for this, for your system? I mean, the thing is that if you're in a rural area and you're not on site, can the
So the purpose of the system is to not have the city staff do it. It's still to have you do it, but not be on-prem.
So the Mimo Life itself is a technical product, right? So it requires, Mimo Life itself is a technical product, so it requires a technical person. But we have this way to abstract the things, and I wanted to show this slide here. Just press the paper. So this can be like the control panel for the city clerk, right? So they can press start meeting, then everything starts, the stream, the recording. There's a slate that announces what for 5 seconds or whatever, that says this is the meeting date, time, this is whatever. then the major goes, okay, good morning, people, or good evening. And you press major open, and then mayor open, not major, mayor open, and the camera is switched to the mayor, the lower third comes in, everything happens, the microphone is turned on. And then you go to the next phase of the meeting where they are discussing things. You probably switch to a white chart, and turn all the microphones on, whatever. Then you have a Q&A, you bring in some Zoom, whatever. And then end. It's, in this case, it only controls what MimoLive does, right? But MimoLive can also, to a certain extent, control other things if you want to. That is a little difficult. I wouldn't say it's doing this thing but that's going to be a different discussion. But I mean, what I say is that you can hand off as much responsibility or as little responsibility to someone in the room or someone in the production system. You can make it as powerful or as simple as possible, right? Because it's all software, you can make it exactly as you want it. So we have one customer in TVW in Olympia, Washington. They run 20 meetings at the same time with our system with 4 people, because everything is automated. And they have one central control system, control center, where they run 20 meetings at the same time.
But those are fairly, like, they've given into how to build the right macro, how to have the right workflow.
Yes.
And so the point is, if you're nobody on-prem, like if they had no operators, they would not be able to adapt to a change, right?
Yes.
But they have 4 operators that are there paying attention for those changes, which is what makes that still work if you're doing macros. The trick with macros is if you are overly automated, the moment you over-automate and the meeting changes, you can't meet it, right? So the key to this was lots of people doing all of these pieces and pressing those buttons, but then having the other people. So there's a lot of pieces that he has built in there, but they're macros, right? So how many people remember Ross Overdrive? Anybody use that? Remember that, right? Take your lower thirds, have your PTZs move, everything's queued. Broadcast Picks does that, right? There's a number of things that do it. I think TriCaster has some of it, right? Like there's Swag It was the one we talked about, right? There are people that are doing these things where they are built in. And then they get a bad rap because you shift away from it, because there was a change and somebody didn't think through the workflow of it. So the key to, like, what he's saying here is he's built a workflow. There's macros, there's these pieces, and if you've thought them through, they're working. But you still need that interactivity of somebody who's paying enough attention to go, oh, wait, that is different. Go to the wide, fix this, now go back to this macro, because it gets you back in the track of things. But if you're fully automated, like pressing one button, if you don't follow the same workflow, it's not going to magically do it.
Okay, folks, you got your phones? Oliver's white paper on this subject. And what is it, 15 pages, something like that?
I don't know, actually.
Quite a detailed paper for you to take a look at. So if you're interested in more detail about this, please do this. I guess this is a revised version of the white paper that you sent me to help try to convince the powers that be to do this session.
So if you have any comments, let us know, and we'll just update the white paper.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody.